Brian.
Hey Natalie, how you doing?
Good. Welcome to the Connection Experiment. This is one of our first episodes under the new brand of our podcast. And, it's all about just understanding how humans flourish. And I really wanted you on this podcast because I thought, who better to have than the expert on connection, right?
Oh boy, expert. You set the bar too high. You can't do that to people.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well,
terrible. The only
you are
way
the
down.
expert
Oh.
in my life. How's that?
Well, that's
So,
very sweet.
um, I thought I'd start by sharing some things that I know about you and, things that I think are interesting. And then you can fill in the blanks wherever you want. The first is that I met you, I think, in 2021, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I think so.
So it's been a bit. The very first conversation we had, where you asked me the question, so you want to put a dent in the universe? What's your big idea? That's what it was.
That does sound like me.
Yeah.
That tracks. Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God, I don't know. But I started, I'm sure, talking. And your bio says that you teach smart people how to explain their big ideas for the rest of us. And I thought that's exactly what I need. I needed a smart person to help me. And so you are the founder of Clarity Up Consulting.
Mhm.
But I think what's so interesting about that is how you got there. And that's you turned down a PhD, which we talked about. I remember once when we met in person. A PhD in philosophy and language. You
Yeah.
toured for a decade as a professional magician. And then you became known for a TED Talk, a TEDx talk that I guess has over 3.6 million views by now. And it was on how to magically connect with anyone. So you can fill in the blanks. I know you have a book. You have a new book coming out. You have a book called Three New People.
Yes.
Yeah, what does it mean to have deep relationships, Brian?
It's it is interesting. I mean, I ask myself that question and also kind of the what version of that am I talking about today question a lot because I started off as a magician, as you noted. I was doing that even before going to college. When I was 16, I founded my business legally and started getting paid to do magic shows and did it. I did magic shows. I toured the Northeast doing magic shows nights and weekends while I was in school. I did my papers, all my philosophy papers in hotel rooms. It was lunacy, and I love being a magician. And what I learned as a magician was how to connect with people because it is one of the strangest situations you could possibly be in, especially because magic is fundamentally antagonistic. It is an art form built on deception where everybody has agreed to the deception.
Right?
It is I know something you don't know. It's a schoolyard taunt come to life. And yet most people, not all, but most people walk away from a magic show feeling elated, joyous, thrilled, wonderful. And you go, well, how does somebody who says, I'm going to lie to you and then does it, how does somebody like that make deep, meaningful connections and in short periods of time? Because the trick of being a magician, I was a close up sleight of hand magician. So even though I did stage shows, my heart and the bulk of my career was doing close up entertainment, going table to table, group to group at events, at functions. So you get 3 or 4 minutes. That's it at a group, sometimes less, depending on, corporate events got 700 people and you got 3 hours and they're like as many people as you can. So you walk up, one joke, make them laugh, one trick, make them go, ah, and then you walk away and do it again at the next group. And so the trick of being a magician is not just I need to make connections with strangers, but it's I need to make them instantly. And
Right.
from that career, without knowing it at the time, I could not have put any of this into language like I am right now at the time, but I didn't realize what I was learning is this skill of human connection, of perspective taking, of tactical empathy with people. And eventually it became something that people wanted to hear me teach about And that's how I transitioned into my own speaking career, where I talk about human connection and now use magic tricks in my speeches to make those points instead of doing magic shows. So,
So it's super interesting to me because I read somewhere, I don't remember where, that you speak of a struggle socially as a kid,
mhm.
feeling isolated or whatever it was. You can tell me what you felt, but how does somebody in that position at 16 years old, which is so young, decide to do something so like like you say, it's challenging from the start in terms of connection. So can you speak a little bit about the path that led you to become a magician?
Yeah, I mean, like, I remember it vividly. I'm sitting in the second to last row of my sixth grade English class, reading class, whatever you would say it was. And it's book report day, and I am a straight A student. I am the one who's breaking the bell curve, and kids hate me in every class. I have no friends, so I may as well be a great student. So I am prepared. I've got my book report folder with a cover and color coded. I'm ready for this. And teacher calls my name, and I stand up, take a step, and wake up in the nurse's office.
Oh,
I apparently blacked out, hit the floor, and that is how we discovered I had a fairly debilitating speech and social anxiety.
oh wow.
As you can imagine, middle school did not get any easier after that. It was fairly public. I, was kind of like bullied like a Disney Channel original movie from the early 90s after that. I was shoved into lockers, had books knocked out of my hands. All the cartoonish things really happened. So
Yeah.
I left. I transitioned to a different school when I went to high school. So I was like fresh start. I was like, I just got to get out of here. I got to go somewhere where kids don't know me. And what was interesting is in ninth grade, I'm sitting at a lunch table. There's these couple of kids sitting at the end of the table. I'm not sitting with them. I don't even think they knew I was at this table. Like I don't even think they knew I was there. And I had a pack of playing cards in my pocket because I grew up around magic. My dad was an amateur magician. My grandfather was an amateur magician. They brought me to magic shows, bought me magic tricks. We loved magic. And so I'd spent my whole childhood learning magic tricks, but I was doing it alone in a room, like doing magic tricks to myself in my bedroom. Now, I don't know if you know this about magic, but it is the only art form you cannot do for your own enjoyment
Yes.
because it depends on somebody being fooled, which means you have to have someone in the room who doesn't know how the trick works.
Right.
And so I do a magic trick for myself in the mirror, and I'm a jerk. I'm my own worst heckler. I'm like, I know how you did that, right? So I'm sitting at this lunch table. These kids are at the end of the table. I've got a pack of playing cards in my pocket, and there's this trick I've been working on recently that is just so cool. And for some reason, I'll never know why, hand of fate, I feel myself pull the cards out of my pocket, turn to these kids and go, do you want to see a magic trick? To this day, I have no idea where that came from. And I think that startled them. They didn't know I was there. And then they're like, I think out of nothing but awkwardness, they were like, okay, I guess, weird guy. And I took out the cards and I start to do this trick. And my hands are physically shaking, right? I mean, I can't believe I keep the cards in my hand. But I managed my way through the end of the trick. Is this your card? And when I did that, they freak out. They jump up, they're screaming, knocking chairs over like something you'd see today on TikTok. And they start calling kids over. Hey, did you guys see? You got to see this. Hey, show them what you just showed us. And I became Magic Kid in that moment.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
so what happens is for the rest of high school, I start to get invited to parties and people want to hang out with me as long as I'm willing to be a magic monkey on command, which I am
Mm,
absolutely willing to be. Show up
right.
pockets full of magic tricks. And through magic, I start to build confidence in my social skills because as a magician, I can hide behind the trick. Like you can be a terrible performer, not charismatic, not funny. Magic tricks are they produce wonder on command just by the nature of the trick. So you can suck at talking to people and still get a reaction at the end of the trick if you make it through it. So by doing that, I started to be able to rely on the trick for my own confidence. And in doing so over time, I started to develop a bit of a wit, a bit of humor. And at some point, I realized I could show up at a party without tricks and I could still be that guy. And so I like became the person I wished I could be through playing a role, through pretending, through magic. And I mean, magic saved my life.
Wow. And magic became a way to connect. And
Yeah.
so, what does that teach you about the, you know, I guess, what does it teach you about connection and people?
Yeah. So magic taught me to connect in two different ways. One is audience facing, and one was the community that it let me into. So let me talk about the community first. So, as a kid who was bullied and friendless, when I found magic, so same, so freshman year of high school, shortly after this happened, I was waiting for history class to start, and I saw this kid, this tall kid that I didn't know, uh, with a pack of cards and a couple of kids around him. And I walk up and I watch, and I see him doing a card trick, and everybody freaks out, and they walk away. And I walk up to him and I said, "Hey, I know how you did that." And initially he was just like jerk, kind of like jerk, like, why would you be a heckler? I was like, no, 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 I know that's a trick deck. I have the same trick deck. I know what that is. So he came over after school. His name was Adam. He came over after school, and I showed him all of my magic stuff. He had one magic trick. He had just been to Disney World with his family that summer, went to the magic shop at Disney. They sell the same 3 tricks to every tourist, right?
Okay.
And so he bought this incredibly overpriced pack of special cards. And he knew this one thing, and I had all these magic tricks, and we became friends. And he would go on to be my like lifelong best friend. When you have somebody else and we are bounded by secrets. You're not allowed to talk about the secrets of the tricks to anybody who's not a magician. So having another magician was like, suddenly I was in this world of misfits, right? Like, I sometimes call magic Revenge of the Bullied. Like, we
Mm,
all had a story like that, and
mm.
we found confidence, or in some cases found power, found arrogance, found ego. I've done all of those things and worked through them, right? But we've found ourselves through magic. And so I would meet up with the local magicians once a month, and then eventually once a week we would all get lunch together. And so this beautiful community of people committed to deception, which is, hysterical when you think about it. It's really unlike any community. I've been in lots of communities in my life, and there's nothing like the magic community. It's really special when you relate to other people at the level of values and shared experiences like that.
So, when did you realize, or maybe it's not when, but what was that realization about when you realized that the real magic was connection?
Yeah, I mean, I think I realized as a magician, I call this the magician's dilemma. The hardest part of being a magician is not tricking people. That's the easiest part, 'cause the tricks do it for you. The hardest part is connecting with people in spite of the fact that you're fooling them. And
Hmm.
you realize that you can do a trick, and people have the "how did he do that" reaction, but that doesn't mean that they like you. In fact, a lot of people are very turned off by that feeling. It's a
Yeah.
cognitive a distortion. Something goes, like, there's this conflict inside of you that's unresolved. It's an open loop that's never closed. And figuring out how to understand the point of view of the person you're doing the trick for, to frame the trick in a way that feels like we are experiencing this together. Therefore, you can enjoy this. This can be enlightening. This can be wonderful, as opposed to this is a challenge. You're going to feel bad that you don't know how this works, or you're going to feel stupid because you don't know how it works. That's the key to real magic. And that was the secret to my commercial success as a magician, where I was just talking to my wife about this earlier. She heard me say to somebody that I was merely an above average magician. And she said, "Do you really think that?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, I know that. I know magicians. I was a good magician, maybe a great magician, but I was by no means a world class magician. I know those guys. There are far, and women for what it's worth, there are far superior magicians. Um, However, many magicians who are extraordinary at tactics, the sleight of hand, the moves, the tricks, just don't know how to make people feel good in their presence. And so they don't get booked. They don't get rebooked. People don't rave about their shows. People just don't, people are blown away by the trick, and then that's it. They feel awkward, weird. They don't refer them. And so I realized I need to figure out how to bridge that gap to get people to enjoy the shows. There was an early show that I did that I had somebody come film. I had someone come film. And I said, please, after the show, go up and put your camera in people's faces and get audience reactions on camera. I thought this would be very helpful. I was like 20 years old at the time. And I got all the footage back and started watching it. And there was this guy that had been filmed after the show. I was so excited to make my new marketing material from this. And this guy on camera, I heard the camera guy go, so what did you think about the show? And the guy being interviewed goes, I got to tell you, at the beginning of the show, I kind of thought he was an asshole. And this is on my camera, you know. I was just like, well, that's not helpful. That can't be good, you know.
Feedback, gift of feedback.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if someone had actually said it to my face, I probably would have dismissed it because your ego goes up, your wall goes up. You go, they just didn't get it. I'm too smart for them. I'm too clever for them. But it was just there. This guy didn't need to do that on camera. He could have just said no, thank you, and walked away. But he felt the need to say it so that I would hear it later. And I just went, what the hell? Like, and so I was like, I went and watched the show with that in mind. And it was like, oh yeah, I see it right away. I am an asshole. I could see it on stage. Yeah. I was like, okay. So the question then became, what is the perspective that the audience is coming in with? I started to get myself out of the, what do I want to do? And I started to ask, what do they want to feel? Or what do I want them to feel? Like, what would be useful to this audience? And that was the start of my intuitive understanding of what I now understand psychologists call perspective taking, which is what I talk about now. But perspective taking is just the ability to see the world from the point of view of other people. And it is simple. It is just not easy.
Okay, so. I'm so happy we're talking about this because the one thing that I hear, you know, as a person who trains and certifies coaches, and these are professional people who have 25-year, 30-year plus careers who come in and they're learning something new, a new way of communicating. They struggle at the beginning with the unlearning of certain things, and they will often say, you know what, I just want to be my authentic self. Why do I need to apply these strategies? I just want to do it I just want to be myself. And I think to myself, you know, like you, a magician, everything that you want to do extremely well, you need to be strategic about it. Yeah. And even connection needs strategy because it's a skill that you learn. So can you just speak to that a little bit about because you know, that perspective taking is huge. It's a very important idea, I think.
Yeah, and I got super lucky. I stumbled onto it early enough because I was burning bridges in my personal life and in my professional life. I was getting the applause at the shows, but the clients weren't rebooking me. And you eventually realize, oh, that's because they didn't love being around me. They didn't enjoy my company. They didn't want to tell people about me. And personal life, you know, relationships, friendships were, you know, falling apart. And once I realized, the key on stage is this understanding the perspective of the audience. And it turns out maybe that's just the same thing off stage. Maybe I just do that all the time. I think the authenticity thing is funny because my mentor, Tim David, he's also a former magician turned speaker. He did it about a decade before I did. So he mentored me across the chasm there. He has this way of talking about authenticity. He calls it misplaced authenticity. When people say, I just want to be me. This is just who I am. This is how I feel. And I'm just going to say what I want to say. And he goes, that is one way to be authentic. You're being authentic to you, to your internal self. But there's other ways to be authentic because probably, like, I think about this. I go, I didn't speak to my grandmother the same way I spoke to my best friend. Was I not being authentic in one of those relationships? Well, no, I was being authentic to the relationship. I spoke with my grandmother the way it made sense to speak with her, and I spoke with my best friend the way it made sense to speak with him. That's what we should be doing all the time, right? Is going, how do I respect the room, the relationship, the environment, however you want to frame it? You're not the only person. It's similar to how I feel about magicians, comedians, other artists who say, like, if you ever hear a comedian go, I just do that joke for me when it doesn't get a laugh. You go, you ass. You're not here for us. You're not here for you. You're here for us, right? It's like, no, you're a comedian. If we're not laughing, the joke's not funny. It doesn't matter if you think it's funny, right? And so it's like, and some people go, well, I don't think it's fair that I can't. You hear this sometimes about the, I'm just not allowed to tell jokes anymore. Woke culture is getting me down. You hear that and you go, all I hear you saying when you say woke culture is preventing you from doing, all I hear you saying is you would love to say things that offend people, but people are mad at you for doing it. Why would you want to not get applause, to not get laughter, to not give people a good time as an entertainer? The culture's changed. You got to change with it. Where are we now, right? So I think authenticity is best described as an alignment between your values and the person you're speaking with. It's like, where do we have common ground? We don't have to agree on everything. In fact, we shouldn't agree on everything. The world would be incredibly boring. I tell people a lot, connection is not about agreement. It's about understanding, fundamentally. It's, I'm here, but I can see why you're there, right? And maybe, just maybe, there's something in between us we can create together that's wonderful.
Yeah, in coaching, we say you don't have to agree, you need to accept
I
what
like
is
accept.
coming forward. Yeah, the acceptance of whatever's showing up. And I also like when we think about coaching as a strategy for connection or as a connection skill, I call it, or language of connection.
Yeah.
I tell coaches who are struggling with the strategy of it, and when they say it doesn't feel authentic, is I actually often use the example of a public speaker. I mean, you can get up on stage and you can talk, or you can get up on stage with a strategy to draw an audience into your talk. And those are two very different outcomes, right?
Yeah.
And one of them is just you being authentic and unprepared and unskilled, perhaps.
Yeah.
And the other one is the ultimate preparation and the ultimate strategy to do the best job you can, to do to have the impact you want. And I really love that alignment to the relationship you're in, because that is what it is. If you want to be a coach, you have to align to the strategy of being a coach, or at least to align to the relationship of the coachee that you're with, right?
Yeah. I mean, because otherwise you're just doing it for yourself. And that's actually why I made that point early about magic is the only art form you can't do for your own enjoyment, because that's actually where magic was such a unique background for me, where I think it taught me that you have to consider the audience, otherwise you literally cannot create magic. Whereas people who, like, I play guitar, right? If you play guitar, you can just play guitar for your own enjoyment. You can play something pretty, you can play something obnoxious, you can play fast, you can play slow, you can play overdrive, you can play whatever you want. You can have lyrics that are hateful and horrible and disgusting, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you're just playing in a room by yourself, for yourself, do you. That's art. That's art. But as soon as you decide, I'm going to go to the coffee shop, or I'm going to show this to my wife, or I'm going to do it, you now have an audience. And if you do not consider who they are, what they might enjoy, you're an ass. Right? Like that's and I did that. I was that guy. Like I lived that. And I think a lot of artists, and we can use art more broadly. I use artists, I think about comedians and ventriloquists and all these people. But I'll borrow Seth Godin's framing of this. Art is any time a human being does something that might not work. Right? And it's like, so coaching is an art. Conversation is an art. Being a receptionist is an art.
You mean meaning doesn't have a predictable outcome? What does that mean? Something that may not work.
Because if you absolutely know with 100% certainty it will work, that's not an art form. That's a machine, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right, because I don't know if my attempt at connection is going to work. I don't know if this magic trick's going to land. I don't know if this joke's going to make them laugh. I'm putting myself out there, and I'm trying something that might not work. But if you don't consider the audience at all, just do it for yourself alone in your room. Like, why would you put that into the world if not to consider the people that are going to receive it? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Now it's so obvious, but I was in that mindset for a long time. I was like, no, this is the trick. I think this joke is funny, and this is the thing I'm going to say. And same thing in my relationships. I was like, this is who I am. This is how I talk. This is the kind of jokes I make.
Accept me for who I am.
And just accept me for who I am or don't. And most people are like, don't. Right? So it was like, all right, fair enough. Decision point. I either keep going through life like that or I change.
Yeah. Do you think anyone can learn how to connect or build connection?
Sure. I mean, why not? It's no baby knows how to do it. I mean, nobody comes out into the world knowing how to make a meaningful connection with another human. I think that's a lot of what, like, you and I have both discovered. You do it at a one-to-one level with coaches. I do it from the stage in corporations. But I joke about this a lot. I'm like, there's no world in which I should be able to get paid professional speaker fees to spend 45 minutes on a stage in front of hundreds of grown adults in suits and say, listen to understand, consider the perspective of other people. I should not be able to make a living saying this, but I do. All over the world for all kinds of organizations. And it's not just me. There's probably 30 or 40 human connection specialist speakers out there right now covering different parts of the world, if not more than that. And the fact that we can make a living doing this, and it's in such demand, tells you people are not learning how to do this. They're not being taught. We don't discover it just by virtue of being a human. It is just, and that's why I talk about perspective taking for what it's worth. And I actually don't use the word empathy, or I rarely use the word empathy. I mentioned tactical empathy earlier. It's a phrase people have heard, which is why I occasionally toss it out. I don't like the word empathy because it makes people think I need to feel what other people are feeling, and I'm just not empathic. I'm just not like that. And I'm like, that's the problem, is that, like, you can spend years with a therapist becoming more empathic. I only got 45 minutes in front of the room with you. I don't have time for that. Perspective taking is just a skill. Like, you call it connection skill. It's just a skill. It's a communication skill that anybody can learn and practice and hone and, quote unquote, master to whatever extent.
What role does curiosity play?
Curiosity for me plays a tremendous role, mostly in getting, there's two ways. That's a really great question. Curiosity plays a role for me when I get a lot of people ask, like, I'm just so nervous to introduce myself to a stranger. When you're dealing with that level, which is very common these days, especially with judgment from culture. What if someone's offended by what I say? All these things, right? I do this a lot with college students who really these days in 2026 especially really struggle with interacting with strangers. I offer them essentially a shortcut to curiosity. And I say, I now assign you a new job title. You have a job title for life. I'm giving it to you. Your job title is collector of stories. Now, if I tell you your job, that's your job, it's collector of stories, and you see a stranger, do you know how to interact with them? They go, of course. I say, what would you do if your job was collect stories? They'd say, well, I'd ask them about themselves. You go, fantastic, right? That's it. That's your job now, collector of stories. That is just a path to curiosity. I don't use the word curiosity because I think it's one of those nebulous words that makes people think, well, I'm just not a naturally artistic person. I'm just not a naturally creative person. I'm not a naturally curious person. It's a word I don't use a lot, but I go, you have to collect stories. That's your job. It's how you make a living. What do you do in a conversation? They go, oh, I asked them about themselves. I go, right. And when they stop talking, what do you do? They go, I ask them a question about whatever they just told me. I go, fantastic. That's a conversation. Go do it. Like, it's not, right? So that's one way, right? Is that,
and you know what I'm thinking right now? I just want to share. You must be like the best dad ever. You're a musician, you play guitar, and you know how to tell your kid how to communicate, how to connect to others. That's about all a kid wants, right?
We do have fun. Milo, he loves my room because you can't see off camera. I got so many guitars. He likes coming in here and he just points at a guitar And then I grab it and sit it on his lap and plug it into my giant amplifier, and he just bashes away at it,
Yeah.
and he thinks it's funny. And
Hilarious.
every so often he runs up to me just holding something like some small toy and just hands it, and he goes, "Daddy, do a magic." I'm like, okay. He wants me to make it disappear and show up somewhere, just like, can you make it show up in my shoe? Just whatever.
Oh no, hilarious.
And the problem with doing that once is you now have to do it every time. You learn that real quick as a parent. Don't do anything once you're not prepared to do 40 billion times. Wish I had never shown him a magic trick. It's so much. So there's that angle of curiosity.
Oh,
You
I didn't
okay?
say.
Did we freeze?
Yeah, we're good. No,
Oh,
I'm good.
okay. Sorry. You froze on your side.
Oh,
So that was one angle on curiosity, is how do you approach a stranger? It's like, well, you basically get curious about their story. Everybody's got a story. Just find out what it is, and that's a way in. The other way that I teach curiosity without talking about it is, if you ever get yourself into a conversation where somebody is talking about something they care about, they're passionate about it, but you don't know anything about what they're talking about. If it's generational, this happens like in corporate. Older folks will be talking to a Gen Z who's talking about some video game that they're obsessed with that they just have never heard of. But it could be just, if I'm having a conversation with somebody who's talking about fly fishing, and I'm just like, I don't care about fly fishing, right? It's not my jam. I don't care. I don't know anything about this. And more importantly than I don't know anything, I just don't care. There's nothing in me that's curious about fly fishing. So how do you continue a conversation with someone if you're trying to make a connection, or if you care about making a connection? And I tell people the magic question here is, what do you love about that? What do you enjoy about that? Because as soon as they stop talking, if I got nothing, because I don't care enough to have a good follow-up question, I say, well, what do you enjoy about fly fishing? You just watch people immediately go one level down, and they'll tell you a story, or they'll reveal something that's about their values or their beliefs. They'll say, well, when I was a kid, my dad and I used to X, Y, and Z. And you discover that they care, they're deeply connected to the value of this connection with their dad. And maybe you can relate to that connection with your dad, or with your mom, or with your brother, but you find a value when you get people to talk about why they care about what they care about. And so the curiosity angle for me is, I tell people, listen, you don't have to care about what they care about. You just have to be curious why they care about it. And you can always carry a
yeah.
conversation.
I mean, the first mentor that I would consider to be a mentor anyway, he said to me, in a coach training, actually, he said to me, you want people to like you? Ask a question and shut the F up. Really, that was it. That was
Yeah.
the big moment of wisdom. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
true. I mean, everybody's favorite subject is themselves. Even the introverts, even the people who don't talk, right? Just because there's people who don't, which isn't to say all introverts don't talk. It's about energy and not whatever. But right, there are folks who don't chime in much socially. Their favorite subject is also themselves. It has to be. We live inside our own heads. It's just that they don't volunteer the way that extroverts tend to. And so everybody loves to talk about themselves. But most people feel awkward. Many people feel awkward talking about themselves. And so by asking them that, like, what do you love about that? What do you enjoy about that? It doesn't feel like a personal question somehow. It doesn't feel private. It lets them take it any way they want. One time, so funny, I'm remembering this, like, at this moment. I was in like an urgent care a bunch of years ago for something, a cough or whatever it was. And this nurse was helping me, and she was really, really sweet. And so we were just making chit chat, and she said, yeah, I've been a nurse for, 12 years, 13 years or whatever. She goes, but I'm honestly, I'm thinking about getting out of it. I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I said, oh, you seem like you're so good at you're so good at this. Like, and she goes, well, I appreciate that. But like, people can be really rude these days, and X, Y, and Z, and it's not as fulfilling as it used to be. And I said, just out of curiosity, like, when you first got into it, like, what did you love about nursing? Like, what did you most enjoy about it? And then she lit up and she goes, well, when I first got into it, I really loved, and she started talking about uh, seeing people who were in trouble and calming them down and helping them feel taken care of. And she started saying things like that. And eventually, when she said, by the way, what do you do? And I was like, well, actually, I teach human connection and I think, and we suddenly, as a magician and a nurse who ostensibly had nothing in common superficially,
Yeah.
one, we found something in common. We both care about seeing people and helping them feel seen. And I watched her rediscover in that moment what she actually loves about nursing at its core. Now, I have no idea if she stuck around in the field because of that, but I have heard from people that when you ask that question, sometimes you will watch people. Some people just go, I hate my job, right? I hate my job. I go, totally, I get that. I'll just go, I get that. But what do you like about it? There's gotta be something you enjoy about it. And they go, well, you know what I really do like about it is, and they'll find something and they'll reconnect with what they love and care about. And that I feel that's a gift. I talk about like give the gift of human connection. A lot of that is like letting people rediscover themselves in the moment in a conversation, and just like what a great gift that costs nothing and you can do a dozen times a day.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's in coaching we call it an appreciative stance, like moving people from
Mm.
that I don't want to the okay, then what do you want then? What do you like? And I love that position of going back to, when you started this, what did you love about it? That's a really good way
Yeah.
to go deeper. I wonder, do you, what do you think stands in the way of connection? You started with the magic, but now you're really working with a lot of executives and people who are trying to communicate a message.
Yeah.
What do you think stands in the way?
Yeah. So there are a lot of things that stand in the way of connection these days. And as you noted, I kind of moved, I still talk on kind of culture and connection at events, but I've also moved a lot into most of the work we do these days is working one on one with individuals to connect with audiences at the level of ideas. So a little bit less these days of interpersonal communication, for the sake of we all feel good as individuals, and a little bit more of a lot of people need to communicate their ideas and connect with audiences at the level of the idea. They need buy-in for their ideas. And it is connection, but it is a different version of it. It's less about how do I feel inside as a human being and more this idea that I have in me that I think would benefit the world. How do I get other people to hold it as well, to buy into it, to take it and run with it? There's so many things that prevent people from connecting these days. One of them is the frantic pace of life. It's just everything feels like it's moving so fast that most people think, I would love to connect with people. I miss the old days. Boy, remember before smartphones, which was just like 2007, by the way. It wasn't that long ago. Like this has happened in a real short period of time. I don't think our bodies were ready for the rapid pace of accelerated technology. You know, they think no one's got time anymore. You hear this a lot in like the healthcare field, for example. Doctors go, I wish I had time with patients, but I get an average of 18 seconds with each patient, that kind of a thing. And I think, so that's one obstacle. So we can deal with that in a second, but one obstacle at a time. Another obstacle is the perception of division. I'm going to say perception of division because while I do think there are real divisions, I think there have been real divisions throughout all of human history, and this is not a new problem. I think mostly the new problem is the algorithmic silos. The internet has pushed each of us into only ever engaging with people who already think exactly like us. And so anything that deviates from that even a little bit feels like a tremendous gap between you and them. And on top of that, the algorithms are, of course, as we know, they're trained to amplify negativity. And so even if it's only 1% opinion, it feels like 90% of our news feeds. So I do think the perception of division has put people into this self-fulfilling prophecy of if I hear anything come out of your mouth that's even a little bit off of what I value or believe, I perceive you as fully in a different camp, a different type of human. It's a quick jump there. I think that is a much bigger problem to overcome. The frantic pace of life can be overcome relatively easily. It does not take that long to make a connection with a human. It can be as simple as you're in line for your coffee and you're going to pay and you're going to do what we usually do, which is I don't even look you in the eye. I look past you or I look through you. I say the thing I want. I tap my card or I boot my phone and I move on with my life with no recognition of the human being getting me my, delicious nectar. You can simply look that person in the eye and say, it's pretty busy today. How's your day going? In and of itself, individual recognition of them as a human being outside of the transactional relationship you're having in span of 2 seconds can make someone feel more connected. So I think we can deal with the frantic pace of life. The division that people feel is a much bigger problem.
Well, I'm super interested in what you're saying because, I see how, the algorithms put news and information in front of you that you have searched up, that you have, expressed an interest in, and then you express an interest and it just becomes more pervasive in your feed, right? It just, more of it comes up. And I've never thought of it as separate. I've thought of it as siloed.
Yeah.
And so our span of knowledge and information becomes more narrow based on our interaction on our phones and on our computers and on, whatever feeds we're on. So interesting to think about the divisions that creates as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes it easy to label. There's been a lot of othering the last few years, kind of the last 10 years, really. It's not that new anymore. A huge amount of othering. And there's this moment that's very dangerous is as soon as you see someone as a different type of person, that's very, very dangerous, right? Like there's a tremendous amount of research on that. And I'm not an academic, so I'm not going to cite the research, and get it wrong. But I've read it. There's a tremendous amount of research on how damaging it is for us and for them, us and them, language, right? When we other somebody, what can be really, I mean, one thing I've done to try to deal with some of the siloing on the internet in my own life is there are apps, I'm not sponsored by or suggesting you should go get these, but like I'm just a paying subscriber to like Ground News, for example, which is just an app that they have independent fact checkers across like 30 or 40 news sources on the far left, the far right, the center, and they have them placed on a thing. And then for each story, they show you, here's how this far left news source reported it. Here's how this one did. Here's how all these different news sources reported it. And it'll give you summaries, but you can also read through each one to see how different news sources, different titles, different headlines, different facts were reported on. And it will also give you this blind spot feature, which is really helpful. So you can say, hey, I'm on the left, typically. Show me my blind spots. Or
so cool.
I'm on the right. Or if I'm on the left, I want to see what are the right's blind spots. It'll say this story was reported on by only 2% of right-wing media and 90% of left-wing media. Or this story was reported on by only 8% of left-wing media and 90% of right-wing media. And so I will see stories I've never heard of, things that have happened that have never come by my algorithm, that are big stories, that are important stories, that are not being reported on by quote unquote my side of the aisle, wherever I happen to lie. And this has been very helpful for me to actually get filled in on what I'm missing in my own newsfeed. But it's helped me develop a tremendous amount of understanding, and dare we use the word empathy, for the people I perceive to be radically opposed to some of my viewpoints, where there have been times where I go, oh, when I had that argument with so-and-so in my family, Uncle Joe on whatever, last week, that's not a real person, but you know what I mean? When I had that argument with Uncle Joe and I was enraged, I couldn't believe that he would think this. And then I look at this feed and I go, this story that I know happened, all that information I have, never came by his newsfeed. He has no idea this thing happened. So of course he has the viewpoint he
What did you
has.
say this app is called? What did you say these?
Ground news.
Ground news.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Just for example, there's a bunch of
Wow.
apps that do things like that, but that's one way that I've tried to take a little bit more control of my access to information, and also has just generally given me more understanding where, yeah, I can just be talking to someone, another parent in our community or school, and they say something that, I perceive as the other side, and it instantly starts to go, oh, they must, and you go, they must also, da, 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 da. And then I go, wait, why don't I just ask them? Why
Mhm.
don't I just ask them? And so
Ask the
sometimes
question.
I'll just go,
Mm.
it's interesting you say that. You know, when I think about that, it seems to me like X, Y, and Z. I'm curious why you don't feel like that. And they would go,
Mm.
well, actually, it's interesting. I do feel like that in these situations, but there's this other situation. Sometimes they'll go, oh, and there's a situation I hadn't occurred to me, right? I think about the very early days of the pandemic. And I genuinely have no idea what side of what I'm about to say you were on. So this is a perfect example. With the masking debate in the early days, we had a newborn child. Like my wife was pregnant 3 months before the pandemic. We were absolutely freaking out. Where I lived at the time, it was just body bags. It was just people falling dead everywhere. It was your neighbors. It was your friends. What we thought was, your friend's relatively healthy 50-year-old father. It was everywhere. And then I would read the news, or I would talk to people on Facebook who lived in like the middle of the country in like North Dakota, and they were just anti-mask, and they thought we were all making this was crazy. And then you realize there's only 200 people in their entire state or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're not around anybody. And so we and so they were saying, why would I put these masks on? This is bad for socializing. It was. This is bad for this. Like it was bad for a bunch of things. But we were seeing death tolls and going, we have to give up some of our socialization in order to do that. And they were going, I don't want to put masks on because that'll have these terrible consequences for my family, for my kids and school and all this. In other words, everybody was saying, I want safety and security for my friends and family. But we were approaching it through different perspectives, different lived experiences, and coming at it from different ways. And once I went, oh, everyone is just trying to make the best decision for the safety and security of their friends and family. I kept repeating that to myself. It was to try to keep myself from getting enraged when I would see a friend of mine in some other state in Florida or whatever, just like at the beach without a mask.
Right.
And there, you know what I mean? It was like, what's happening? So
So what does
yeah.
AI do to that exponentially? Because AI, people are now having conversations with AI. They're not even talking to each other, they're talking to an app. What does that do to perspective?
I think that's a great question, and I can only answer this as a user of AI. I'm not an expert on
Okay.
AI. I'm not an academic on AI. I have clients who are. I'll let them take this at some point. But as a user, I would call myself an Uber user. Like I use AI a lot. Like I loved it as a tool, but mostly I've realized very, very early in 2022, I was like, oh, like it or not, this is where everything's going. It was obvious immediately. So I was like, I need to understand this technology. And the only way to understand it is to use it, right?
Hmm.
It's like, it's the reason that I don't have a TikTok account for my brand. It's because I don't use TikTok. I don't understand it at all. So trying to make an account, the two or three times we've tried to make an account has been completely fruitless because I don't know how to make TikToks because I don't use it. So I was like, clearly this AI stuff is the future. So I've been using it a lot. What I've discovered over the last 3 years of using ChatGPT, Claude, AI chatbots, is clearly, obviously, it is biased. The AI is not just, and I'm not talking about the obvious, there's just like everything else in society, it was built by rich white men. It will reflect that perspective. We know that. I'm not trying to hand wave that problem. It's a real problem. But it is biased to the happiness and agreeableness of the user. That has become incredibly obvious the longer you've used it. You ever used AI and actually tried to get it to help you work through an idea And all it can do, no matter how many times you go back and forth, is just tell you what a great idea everything is. Have you ever changed your point of view 180 degrees mid-conversation and have it just instantly agree with you and keep moving as if it had always agreed with you? And I'll do that occasionally. And then I'll call it out and I'll go, hey, just out of curiosity, when we started this conversation, you 100% agreed on this. I changed gears, and you are now 100% agreeing with this. And these are opposite opinions. They are not compatible. What's up with that? And it's
But
like,
can AI
yeah.
have an opinion? It's not
Well, that's
human.
right. It doesn't. It doesn't have an opinion. It cannot have an opinion. It has no lived experience. It has no subjectivity. And so the AI tools are biased to the agreeability of the user. This is a big problem. I have developed for myself ways to cheat around this over the years just for the sake of it. I have trained my own custom models on being contrarian, on disagreeing with everything I say and providing evidence. Like every time I say something, argue with it with the best evidence you can find on the internet. Like I've done that to stress test my own ideas, but mostly because it's not that helpful to have someone that just agrees with me all the time. I have a mom, she loves me. She doesn't even agree with me all the time, but even when she disagrees with me, it kind of feels like she agrees with me because she's my mom. It's like, I don't need another mom, and I think what's frustrating about it though, is that I think to tie it all back to the beginning of our conversation, I think so many people feel so deeply disconnected from the world. They don't feel seen. They don't feel heard. They don't feel understood. They don't feel valued by the world, by their friends, family, colleagues, coworkers. And AI validates them. It feels. It goes, this is a great idea. You're onto it. Absolutely. You made the right call in that situation. Your friend's an idiot. It does that. And if you take someone who just doesn't feel like the world cares about them or anybody's invested in them at all, why would you ask it to argue with you? You wouldn't. I'm lucky enough, and apparently by all the stats and studies, in an increasingly small percentage of the population, I'm lucky. I am very fulfilled and feel like people care about me and see me and understand me and love me, my wife, my friends, my family, my clients, like my team. I get that. I don't need AI to do that. I'm like, argue with me. You know what I mean? Like I want AI to just help me stress test my ideas. I don't think most people want that because I think the pull to feel valued is so strong. And if we don't figure out how to start doing that for each other, AI will take over. And it is a big problem.
Well, there's so much to discover, like explore here. I mean, what's the meaning of connection moving forward when AI is so present in people's lives? And I had a conversation with my daughter the other day, and she said that she's 20, and she said that people don't even look at each other at school. Their eye contact is with their devices. It's not with each other. She hasn't had one meaningful conversation as a university student who just started this semester. She hasn't had one meaningful conversation because nobody asks a question and nobody looks up. What does that mean for connection moving forward?
I think there's good news here.
Good news. I love good news.
I am actually optimistic about this for the first time. I'm not a pessimistic person. I generally consider myself a realist, a rationalist, right? The glass is not half empty. The glass is not half full. It is merely twice as big as it needs to be. Yeah. But I have switched from kind of being realistic about the state of things over the last 5, 6, 7 years to being optimistic because of exactly what you just described. Your daughter came to you and said, I don't feel connected. People aren't looking at me. No one's asking questions. You know what's great about that? She recognized it. The previous generation, especially the one that got hit with COVID, students that were in late high school, early college get hit with COVID, they didn't recognize it. They were perfectly happy just don't talk to me. I don't want to be around anybody. I want to be in my own room, doing my own thing, watching my own news feed, and just not talking to anybody. They didn't want to be connected. They didn't see that there was anything wrong. For a couple of years, all of a sudden, the speech I had been giving on human connection to colleges for years stopped working, because the premise of the talk was we all want to be connected. We just don't know how. And these students were like, no, we don't. I don't want to be connected. And I was like, well, if the premise of the talk is wrong, there's nothing to talk about here. So I stopped doing colleges for a little bit, because I was like, I have nothing to say to these kids, basically. I'm not going to try to convince them that they should want to talk to people. That seems absurd from the front of the room. But now, over the last, I'd say since 2024, I've gotten back into the college market, especially during orientation season, because students are coming in going, I don't like this. I don't know how to change it, but I know this isn't it. They can feel that this isn't right. And you can see there's news stories about school communities and colleges where students are starting clubs and banding together, agreeing to go back to dumb phones, flip phones that just text.
Yeah, I saw one for sale at Best Buy.
Yeah. And there's students who've agreed, like, in communities to do that. And you're starting to see students get off of, they're leaving social networks, right? They're actually trending. I want to be careful about claiming this, but I feel like I just saw a study that said for the first time in ages, young people getting on social networks is trending downwards instead of upwards. They're coming off of them. And I think there's this recognition that something is fundamentally wrong. Like it's like Neo before he was Neo, right? Thomas Anderson knows there's something wrong with the world, but he didn't find Morpheus yet to show him the Matrix to confirm his suspicions. Like students are in that situation. They're like, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's very good news. And I think humanity will be fine, because
you're echoing the founder of Replit. I forget his name at the moment, but he said the same. He said that culturally, societies have antidotes to cultural problems. Like it will correct itself. Give it some time, and people will I guess push back, find the answers. So super interesting. Couple final questions that, I see we've been together for an hour, and I know you have a life beyond this podcast.
No, this is wonderful. This is wonderful.
I wonder about, is there one or two things that you might leave the audience with that if they want to just use some strategy for connecting? Two things that come to mind, quick, easy, I can try this tonight, tomorrow with somebody I know. What would be like simple strategies that you would recommend?
Cool. So let's start with someone you know. What's a quick, easy strategy for connection with someone you already know? I call this the conversational get out of jail free card. So this is if someone's talking to you, a person you care about, you want to have a meaningful connection with this person, friend, family, student, fellow student, whatever, teacher. And they've been talking for a little bit. And you can feel, you can feel someone's about to end their part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And they're gearing up to toss the metaphorical ball back to you, and you are not prepared to catch it. Right? You have no idea. You have no idea what you're going to say. You start going, oh God, I have to ask them a question or figure out something to say or whatever. And you just go blank. You forget all words and the language that you speak. In that situation, you simply say this: tell me more about that. It feels like such a cheap trick the first time you use it, but as long as you use it with the right inflection, tell me more about that. And not a command. Tell me more about that, right? You don't want to do it. So just like, tell me more about that. You will physically watch people's body language change. They will subconsciously sit up, because we are so used to people vying for the spotlight. We're so used to being cut off, people looking at their phones instead of listening to us. We're so used to it now that when you just go, tell me more about that. And people go, my God, you want to know more about what I think or what I feel or what I'm telling you about? It's a beautiful, beautiful moment, and it always works. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually a strategy we teach in coaching, because the what else question is one that, like you said,
the awe question, and what else? Yes.
Right. If I get distracted, because we have distracted brains as humans, so it's a self-management skill as well.
Yeah.
where somebody's talking to you and you've lost the plot of the conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
great safe question is, what else?
Yeah.
And people just start talking more. It's a probing as well, which I think is a great, really great strategy.
So that's one for somebody that you already know. Here's one for the folks who want to get better at meeting new people. Boy, I wish I was the kind of person that could just strike up a conversation in line at coffee. I see people do that and just go, oh, what would it be like to be that person? Uh, I, I mean, I call this the KISS technique, by which I do not mean walk up and kiss a stranger. Do not do that. You will be arrested. Uh, right? KISS stands for keep it simple, stupid. So if you prefer not being yelled at by me, keep it simple, silly. So the KISS principle is keep it simple. The easiest way to introduce yourself to a stranger is to say, "Hi, I'm Brian." Just say your name. "Hi, I'm Brian." You know what happens when you give people your name? It is almost physically impossible for people to not respond with theirs. We've been trained our whole lives to just respond with our names. Somebody, you go, "Hi, I'm Brian." You go, "Oh, hi. Oh, me? Hi, I'm Natalie." Like you said your name. I have to say my name, and that's it. You're talking. It's not that hard. It
What do you
really
say after
isn't that
that?
hard. What do you say after that? Ask them. So if you want to know, so what do you say after that? First of all, most of the time, if people can get across that, they can keep going. Just for what it's worth. Like most of the time, if someone responds friendly and says hello, they can keep going. But if you want to go after that, the easiest thing, and this is going to sound like the most obvious, dumbest thing ever, and it's just like people don't do it for some reason. We all go blank when we panic and we forget that we can do this. Here's a couple of things. One, comment on your shared environment. By definition of the fact that you're standing near someone, you are in a shared environment. Even if you're on Zoom, you're in a shared environment. There's a reason you're on this Zoom call. There's something you have in common. So if you're standing in line for coffee, you're at Starbucks or whatever, you can just say, you could say, the music's a little loud today. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can comment on anything. What do you think of those green chairs? It doesn't matter. You can comment on anything in your shared environment, and somebody will give you their opinion as soon as you do that. You comment on something, they will also comment on it. It's wild. You don't even have to ask a question.
Yeah.
But if you want to ask a question, the type of question that you want to ask to strike up a conversation, typically, the one that I prefer, is ask for a suggestion, not for their opinion. I think the mistake people make is asking for an opinion. They say, I'm not sure which bagel to get. Which one should I get? And they don't know you. They don't want to tell you something and then you don't like it and then it's wrong. And then people get very nervous to give their opinion to someone they don't know. But if you say, if you ask for, you don't want their, what did I say? You don't want their suggestion. I'm sorry. You don't want them to give you advice because they don't know you well enough. They're nervous to give you advice. What you actually want is their opinion. Sorry, let me flip that. You don't want a suggestion because a suggestion is, I think you should do this. And people don't like to do that with someone they don't know. You want to say, which one do you like? Right? I'm looking at these 3 different muffins. Which one do you like? And they can just tell you which one they like. Or you could say, which one would you get? And they would say, well, I would get the banana one, but not everybody likes banana. Like, they don't have to feel awkward. Everyone's happy to give you their opinion.
And you don't feel like you have to take the suggestion.
Right. You don't feel like you have to take a suggestion. Right. So you don't want to ask for someone's suggestion or advice if you're just meeting them. You do want to ask for their opinion. Everyone's got an opinion on everything.
Well, I always end our podcast with a couple questions. So the first one would be, what does fulfillment mean to you?
It's a very deep question. What does fulfillment mean to you? Fulfillment to me is not happiness. That's the first thing that comes to mind right away. I'm going to define it by going in the negative first to find my way to the actual definition. It's not happiness. I realized that a long time ago. Happiness is an emotion, and it is fleeting. I feel happy lots of times. There's just also lots of times that I'm not happy. And if I was focused on happiness, I would lose my mind. I just feel like I would never get anything done. Fulfillment is when I feel a sense of purpose, like the things that I do have meaning, whether it's meaning to me or meaning to the people around me, ideally both, right? I feel fulfilled when essentially I'm working on a meaningful project. And so I try to always be working on a meaningful project, which is not to say that I'll work out. I'm not less fulfilled when things are failing. I'm fulfilled when I'm doing work that I perceive as meaningful or valuable. And there are many times I'm happy, but probably many more times that I'm not. When they've done this with parents. They check in with parents. They did this crazy study, right? You must know the study. They check in with parents. Okay, so they would randomly call a parent of young kids at random times throughout the week, throughout the day, and go, "Are you happy?" And
Really? I've
almost
never heard
all the
this.
time, almost every time, parents of young kids, "No, I'm not happy," right? Rate your happiness. Not happy. Are you fulfilled? Off the charts. Absolutely fulfilled, right?
Oh,
That
interesting. Yeah.
parents, most of being a parent of young kids is just miserable. It's brutal. You don't have any sleep. They don't like anything you say. You have to set rules. You have to deliberately do things that you watch them get upset because of something you said, because you're helping them become a better person later. Being a parent is brutal. Happiness, if you're going for happiness, don't be a parent. But parents are much more fulfilled than non-parents, right? Like there's a difference, which isn't to say you can't be fulfilled if you're not a parent. But when they track this, as far as I remember, and if I can find it later, I'll send you the reference. But it's like happiness is lower for parents, but fulfillment is higher. So
My standard line when I was a mother of young children was good for the world, not good for your mother. I used to say that all
I
the time.
I
Good for the
I
world. Don't use it out there, but don't use it here.
yeah. That's so funny. I love it. I asked my two best friends before we had our first. They both had kids already. I asked them both before we decided to have when I knew that we were having one. I said, tell me, what is it like? What's it like becoming a dad? And I'll never forget my best friend Mike. He said, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, and it completely ruined my life. And
Oh,
that
wow.
was probably the most right sentence anybody has ever said. You know what I
Right.
mean? It was just
Right.
like, yeah. Best thing
Mhm.
I ever did.
Mm.
100%. Yeah, totally
Yeah.
ruined my life.
Well, the
Yeah.
other line I use often is have kids, they said. Have kids, they said. When my
Yeah.
daughter or my son do something like, oh,
Yeah.
it's
But
fun.
but fulfillment of being a parent off the charts. Happiness comes and goes. There's moments of just joy upon joy. And there's just so many more, like
Hmm.
watching
Hmm.
my kid's first swim class lesson yesterday. It's just
Oh, yeah.
not happy. But someday he will know how to
Oh,
swim, and
right,
that will be good.
right. All right. Well, the next question is one piece of advice you would give your younger self, your 16-year-old self in this case, about to become a magician. What would be the wisdom of your life today?
What advice would I give my younger self? If I were talking to me at 16, I'm going to cheat this answer. You're not going to like this answer. I would resist the urge to give myself advice because I am so fulfilled and so incredibly grateful for the life that I have. And I got here. I wish I hadn't hurt people when I was younger by kind of being an ass and whatever. I wish I hadn't have done that. I would take it back if I could to them. But going through that, knowing how bad it was and what a hole there was in my life when I was so bad at connecting with people is what got me to the other side. It's what
Mm,
propelled me through it. And it's now I now get to share that with so many more people because I have that story, right? And
yeah.
so I would resist the urge to give myself advice. If I was going to tell my 16-year-old self anything, it would be good news, time travel is possible, and two, uh, and
Okay.
two, I would say you're gonna be lost. Just do whatever's next.
Mm, okay. And the last question is, if you had one question for the universe that you could get the answer to, what would it be?
Question for the universe that I could actually get the answer to. Is it better to help one person or a few people deeply, or many, many people a little bit?
Mm, that's a good question. And I actually have one more question for you because the silence, I did want to ask this question and I forgot. What's the role of silence in connection?
What's the role of silence in connection? I think the role of silence, I discovered the power of silence on stage. It's actually one of the easiest ways for me to track how confident a speaker is when I watch them take pauses in silence on stage, or a
Mm,
magician or an entertainer.
hmm
You can tell someone's nervous when they fill every second with
mm,
noise. And I'm an extrovert and I love to talk, and my inclination is to fill the silence. I don't like silence generally. I would rather I have music on in the background, podcast on. Like, I'm not good with silence and too many thoughts. However, I've learned on stage that if you go quiet and the whole audience stays quiet, there's this tremendous, beautiful tension where
mm,
everyone's wondering what's going to happen next. And that question, what's going to happen next, that's like the whole game.
hmm
Like, that's the game of being on stage as an entertainer. I sometimes feel like that's the point of life, is just what's going to happen next, right? What's going to happen next? I don't know, you know? And so silence is very powerful when it comes to connecting with people one to one. I think we need to give people grace in silence and not jump in and fill it ourselves. The likelihood that you are going to know it's okay to sit in silence with me is very low. There's no reason you would know that. So we kind of have to train people through example. That, I was on a call with a client earlier today, and I asked them a question that was a fairly tricky question, an important question, and they went off like this. And they stood there for long enough that I wasn't sure if Zoom froze. I was kind of like, did I lose him? That's a part of the problem of virtual. I was like, did I lose him? But I saw him blink. I was like, okay, he's still there. And I had to resist the urge after a good 10, 12, 15 seconds of silence to just go, here's another way to think about it, which I can do. And sometimes, for the sake of time, you have to do. But I had time today. We had time. And so I just sat there.
mm,
And at some point, I just stared down so he didn't feel like I was burning his eyes through the camera. I just stared at the table until he came back and had collected his thoughts. And I think that is very powerful when we can do that for people, but they're not going to know that we will do that for them unless we train them through example, essentially, that we can do that.
mhm. Well, this was a lot of fun. This was really cool. I'm so
Yeah.
happy to have had this time with you. And I believe connection, when it's practiced on purpose, changes everything. So thank you for practicing connection with me on purpose.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. And people can reach out to you. We're going to give them your contacts in the show notes. Is there anything, like a quick place anybody can just touch base with you if they want to know more?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Brian Miller Speaks. You can find me anywhere.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
We hope this conversation has inspired you to share this episode with a friend and subscribe for more connection conversations. Pay the gift of awareness forward. Share this episode and belong to a community celebrating what it means to be human, flawed, and flourishing. This is the Connection Experiment produced by Coach Academy. I'm Nathalie. Thanks for listening.